Hi, everybody. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Yeah, and well, I was trying to do some intense research on you before this fireside chat, and I kind of Googled you, and the first thing that popped up was, UK's. It was a Vice documentary, and it had UK's toughest debt collector. And then I realized it's not Shane Smith, it's Sean Smith. So, I mean, essentially, I think since you're here now, we can screw Google right now, and we can ask you, what is Vice?
Well, we just showed the video, but we're the largest new media company in the world, the largest youth media company in the world. We do television, online, mobile, OTT.
Yeah.
And we are probably the largest producer of video in the world.
Right. So, I mean, this has been what you started in '94. So that's before Monica Lewinsky was an intern in the White House, and a lot of. How has been the journey? I mean, how's the journey been? You've seen the landscape change also in front of you.
Well, I think we have an affinity with Times of India because we started as a magazine, so we were print. We moved into digital,
right.
And it sort of took us 10 years to get to 1 million copies of the magazine, and then it took us 1 year to get to 10 million uniques a month, so we knew that the future was digital.
Right.
And we were first movers into digital content online and native advertising, and then after that we moved into television, and now we believe in all three screens at the same time.
So essentially you are a classical kind of platform agnostic in that sense, but Vice also has a sort of internationalist spirit in its DNA. I mean, not only did you sort of cross the Great Wall of Canada in '94 when you wanted to scale up from a magazine to something else. Tell me more about, why is it that you have, well, I won't use the word global simply because, I mean, international markets, and how do you manage to keep the local identities of each market in shape?
Well, I think for the first time ever, because of the internet, you have, kids in Mumbai or New Delhi, New York, Shanghai, Stockholm, knowing the same about music, politics, culture, fashion, yet all of those cities have their own, despite this universality of youth subculture, you have their own sort of twist. And so the key is to get that mix right. The key is to get, the international flavor, but at the same time have that domestic input. And so what we've done, now we're in 80 countries, is to sort of get that mix of best of, we're not an American content company, we're a global content company, and people can pull from all of our countries and then put their own stuff in there as well.
Initially that model was kind of we saw that in MTV or VH1, where initially we were getting just the American version of it, and then it kind of had the localized content. But coming back to, the audience itself, the viewers, young people are moving away from mainstream media, and you are actually sort of going fin out of water into that direction. How do you plan to reconcile that?
Well, like I say in the video, you have to give it over to young people, and that sounds logical. But the problem is young people generally haven't made anything. They're just out of school. And so if you have a young person come and say, here's $10, $20 million, go make a TV series, most people won't do that. But what you have to do is say, okay, look, there's a different language, there's a different tonality, there's a different sensibility that young people have, and you have to sort of take that blind leap of faith and say, we're going to have this cultural revolution every few years with young people. I always joke, we every few years we give the company over to the interns, and they decide where we're going to go. And I think a lot of the decisions that we've made as a company happen because of that.
Okay. I mean, I think, a lot of people in this room sort of following you on the cultural bits, the localization and the way you said it. But I think they really want to know one question. What is your revenue model? Where does the money come from?
Well, I think the digital space is quite interesting because last year Google and Facebook took 72 cents of every advertising dollar on the web. I believe this year they'll do something like 80 cents on the dollar. You add Snapchat into that, there's very little money left for independent publishers. So that's why we went to a platform agnostic philosophy of be on all platforms at all times as long as you can increase your reach and monetize it. So how we monetize is we were one of the first movers in native advertising. Okay. So we ported native advertising over to television. We make ads for the content specifically that the brands pay us for. So that's one revenue stream. News is another revenue stream. Okay. TV is another revenue stream. Online is another revenue stream. And then direct to consumer, because I think going forward, if you're solely advertising based or even sub based, then you're going to go the way of the dodo. It's not going to last long.
But it's also, I mean, you also believe in sort of cross-platformizing in the sense that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have had content which was initially for either the net or mobile, which now you're sort of repackaging in China for television. Is that correct?
All over the world, not just China, but all over the world. Yeah, I think we were the first online news company to actually move into television, and we moved into television in our first year. You know, internet news at the time was considered here, and TV news was here. And so we were the first to actually move from online to TV, and the first year we won 2 Peabodys and an Emmy for Best News Series. And so that sort of showed us that we could be gold standard. And so in China, for example, we do a thing called the Creators Project, taking Chinese creators out of China to the rest of the world, and then they come back to China. So we love taking, you know, content creators from various countries, and we're very excited about coming to India, actually, to get, you know, there's so many creative young people here in music and in fashion and in food and in travel, and sort of take them out into our platforms around the world.
That's great. And, you know, I mean, I also wanted to check, I mean, in India, it's there are challenges that, I mean, do you see some challenges specific to India that you've thought about in terms of, let's say, digital especially?
Well, I think it's very fast moving. I think if you look at the digital space here, it's burgeoning, it's happening in real time. But I think that, you know, I come from Canada, and Wayne Gretzky used to play with a concrete puck, so that when he actually played in a game, it was easy. And I think if you can do well in the mobile markets in India, you'll be able to do well everywhere in the world, because it's so fiercely competitive. But I also think that the young population, the youngest on earth, is so thirsty for content, millennial content, international content. So we see it as a big opportunity to come here, build a studio, fill it with talented people, make content here, bring our best content from around the world, and challenge ourselves to keep up with the very fast-paced media landscape here. Thank you. Don't be afraid to clap. That's great.
No, they'll clap the next question that I'm going to ask. So why did you choose to partner with Times of India?
Well, I think the very easy reason is, well, there's 2 reasons. One is they're very good at, you know, I was saying to someone last night, the New York Times should have done what the Times of India did, in that they took their brand, very trusted brand, moved into TV, you know, OTT, mobile, etc., online. And for our company, we looked at that and said, that's what we have to do in India as well. We want to be on all platforms at all times. And I think that they're the best in India, and as an old print guy too, the biggest publisher in India. So they're a perfect partner in a perfect fit sense. But last night we went out for dinner with the senior management and the team, and I've got to say, just as people, they're fantastic. And when you do a joint venture, you're going to be married for a long time, so you better like them. And I think that they're some of the best, smartest, most dynamic people in India, and we couldn't be happier than partnering with them.
Sure. And I mean, what do you, I mean, specifically for Vice, but also in general, how do you see, let's say, media moving in 10 years? And the reason I'm asking this question is, like, I think for the last 5 years or even earlier, people have kind of seen the future of media. But somehow the future of media keeps kind of receding, and it's become a kind of theoretical concept in which you're always talking about the future of media. When is the future of media coming?
The future of media is now. And what's happening is there's a massive consolidation happening in digital because there's a downward price pressure in digital. There's, and what's happening here in India is happening in the rest of the world with commodification. So digital is going to go through a real cull. TV, popular TV will do well. Unpopular TV won't. There'll be skinny bundles. Everything will go bespoke. Yeah. I think if you look at a generation that comes up with Netflix or iTunes, they can just pick and choose what they want anyway.
Yeah.
So I think, for us going forward, we see that there will be this consolidation. AT&T is going to buy Time Warner, which will set off keeping up with the Joneses. Verizon is already buying AOL and HuffPo and Yahoo. Yeah. There's rumors that every big strategic is buying a network as soon as the AT&T deal closes.
Yeah.
So you're going to see that happen, as well as a lot of digital go away. Big push into mobile, obviously, but mobile, ironically, right now, it's funny, is, for mobile, they need to drive data usage, yeah, and they need to, which is video, and they need to stop the churn, so they need exclusive content, which is video.
Okay.
This is why AT&T wants to buy Time Warner. And what you're going to see is a lot more video. The problem is you can't go to, let's say, Vodafone and say, I need $1 billion to make a lot of video. You have to actually make a TV network, make all that video, then go to Vodafone and say, here's all my, So ironically, we had to get into the TV business to get the scale to move into the mobile business.
Sure.
And that's why we're very excited about what's happening in India, because I think India and Japan are the two countries at the foremost of data usage and video usage in the world, and so we're extremely excited to come.
Much of that is porn, you know that.
Okay, so, that's in Japan.
Yeah. So you do believe in content, so in terms of the quality of content. I mean, in all this, there is a sort of, I would say, America is going through a golden age of, let's say, cable, for instance, in terms of content.
I think globally it's a golden age. I think if you look at it, I say it in the video, everyone was investing into platform, everyone was investing into tech, and I used to get very angry because every time I was in Silicon Valley, they'd say, this algorithm is going to do this, this algorithm is going to make content, and I kept saying, look, algorithms don't make content. They aggregate content. People make content, and it has to resonate with people. So the great thing now is the big platforms, because of Netflix and because of the success of Amazon, for example, you have Apple entering into the game, you have Google entering into the game, and all of a sudden, where Disney and Fox and the big studios were at one point the only place you could go, or the highest level, now you have all the tech companies outbidding them.
Yeah.
And so for a content creator, on digital you have a sort of, through the programmatic buying, you have a downward pressure.
Yeah.
But on the content side, if you stayed and didn't go in the algorithmic way, actually you have this incredible auction happening where if you have premium content, the price is just going up and up and up and up.
Yeah. So, I mean, content is getting what it deserves, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
also.
Content is king. You can't have engagement on TV, on mobile, online, unless you have something that people want to watch. And people want to watch things that they trust, and there's so much stuff out there that you need a brand so people can go say, oh, I know what that brand is, I'm going to go watch that thing.
I mean, as a CEO, you're sounding like a journalist because you are a journalist. So I just wanted to ask a question in terms of, you host the Vice on HBO show, and, I mean, what's the stories that excite you? I mean, as both CEO and journalist, I don't think.
I think last year what was exciting is we did a documentary with the then President Obama, and all he and his team wanted to talk about was how the Republicans stymied his administration. I don't know if Dick Cheney's still here.
Yeah.
And then so we said, well, let's go talk to the Republicans, and the Republicans talked about how the Democrats stymied them. And so basically, it's the intractability of both sides and how Washington ceased to work.
Okay.
And then we sort of predicted the Trump election because of this frustration.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is very interesting. I like stories that are sort of, they fall off the news cycle, but are very important. Environmental stories, you know, environmental concerns are number one for millennials, yet seem to be taking a back seat to populist politics, which we worry about.
It's also more difficult to tell. So there's a certain craft in the content that you have to give if you want to do, let's say, a story on environment. It can't be just green trees and stuff. But there was a, let's say, the documentary on, in North Korea, for instance, or even the one with Syria and ISIS. How do you get in touch with these guys? I mean, I have trouble getting an appointment with a secretary.
Yeah. A lot of times we just ask.
Politely?
Yeah. Well, we're not going to be like sort of angry.
Okay.
Give me an interview.
Okay.
We were the only news organization to embed with ISIS, which we did because we said, look, how is it that these people can recruit 60, 70,000 foreign fighters every year?
Absolutely.
And so we embedded in ISIS, in the Islamic State, and saw them.
Why do you think they would let this, you know, guys from New York come in and, you know, do stuff with them? Because
we are non-political, we're non-paradigmic, non-partisan. We press record and we say, okay, let's see it. So when we do something on Obama, we do something with Speaker Boehner and Cantor, etc. When we do something on ISIS, what we're trying to do is show why they're popular, because it's a conundrum. When we go to North Korea, you know, for example, again, referencing Dick Cheney's speech, we hear a lot about North Korea and saber rattling, and for sure they're doing very questionable things. But it reminds me of the Cold War, when it was on our side, you know, commies eat babies, and on their side it was the American gangsters, and there's so much rhetoric and propaganda. And when you actually go to a country is made of people. And generally those people are nice and fine. And now the regime or the leaders are different, and they do very terrible things. But when it comes down to it, when we went there and did that documentary, you see the people, and the people are just people. And so I think communication is key. And the minute you say, we're not going to communicate, we're not going to talk to these people, we're just going to listen to propaganda, then you dehumanize them, which is the first step towards war.
I mean, so how do you cover, let's say, Donald Trump? I mean, who, unlike any other leader that we know, is very combative with the press?
Well, the problem with Trump is he's very good for ratings, so people get addicted to it like a drug. But the problem with any drug addiction is you eventually have to stop or you die. So we decided that we weren't going to fall victim to the sort of tweet storms and the every day there's a scandal. But what we wanted to do instead was look at policy, and what does that mean? I think that a lot of, because Trump is so, you know, chaotic, you miss a lot of things that are happening in policy. For example, you have someone who's running the EPA who wants to dismantle the EPA. You have someone running the Department of Energy who campaigned as a presidential candidate to do away with the Department of Energy. You have the CEO of the largest fossil fuel company, the ex-CEO, now Secretary of State. In fact, 9 of the 10 people in the cabinet are all big oil or big oil supporters. So what does that mean as a policy? And, you know, there was this, to go back to millennials, there was this feeling that, okay, maybe we're a day late and a dollar short, but we're in the right direction. Finally, we signed the Paris agreements. Finally, China and America can get together and agree. You know, finally, we're working towards social justice issues, environmental issues. We're on the right. And in fact, legalizing weed is a big thing in America for young people.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the government comes in and reverses all of that and tries to undo all of that. So you have a lot of angst, disenfranchisement, and you know, last year, millennials became the largest cohort in the world, the largest demographic in the world.
Right.
Yet they don't have their share of socioeconomic power, and they're feeling politically disenfranchised. And I think what you're seeing now in America are a lot of young people confused because the baby boomers still have this sort of outsized power in the media and in politics, and so you have a generational divide.
Yeah.
And so what the Gulf War did for CNN, that generational divide is doing for Vice.
But it's also kind of brought the millennials back into the political picture in that sense. I mean, earlier they were, you know, doing their thing. They were moving away from mainstream media. I'm not going to say that they're coming back to mainstream media, but they're engaging much more. So I guess that is where trust issues with the media comes into play, right?
Yeah, I think you had a whole generation that came of age with weapons of mass destruction, the invasion of Iraq, the invasion of Afghanistan, collusion of the media with the government. And so, you know, you had a lot of distrust and distrust in brands. And so they decided to make their own brands. And one of those brands was Vice, because they chose us. We didn't choose them. We were just making content.
Right.
They chose us because we were non-political and making this sort of press record type journalism that resonated with them. We're the fastest growing news platform in the world because our audience is demanding it.
Yeah. I'm just going to sort of ask one last question before we wrap. I mean, broadly, your philosophy is going to be intact when you come to India? I mean, in terms of, you know, the content, and obviously you'll have to tweak things according to local sort of issues and things. What are your non-negotiables?
Look, we're in 80 countries, and every country is its own and has its own specific, you know, benefits and challenges. I think India is such a large, complex, dynamic country. We're not here to say we're going to solve anything or we're going to demand anything. What we're excited about is tapping into the great creative young people here who are so, again, thirsty for content, but also want to make things, tell their stories, and get them out on our platforms around the world. So we're excited to sort of do both, to bring our content, but also to take content from India out to the rest of the world. And I think that, you know, we're not coming in with any preconceived notions. We just see a tremendous, educated, you know, hungry population, and are excited because young people all over the world are thirsting, they're questing, they want to change the world. They have to change the world. You know, I always used to say the check is in the mail. The check isn't in the mail. It's been delivered and the waiter is waiting to be paid. And young people know that, and they demand change, they want change, and as media, we have to follow along with that.
Absolutely. And so, thank you, Shane. And I think you can also say that you're also diversifying in beer, right? Do you want to, like...
Well, okay.
You have to.
So we believe that the 30-second spot is dying, the commercial, the ubiquitous commercial. And so you have to find, you know, different ways of monetizing. And so we come up with different ways of doing things. We have a strategic in-house agency called Virtue, which is coming to India. And they're the millennial agency for a lot of brands. One of those brands is ABI, Anheuser-Busch InBev, the largest beer producer. And so they went to ABI and said, what do you have a problem with? And they said, you know, microbreweries, craft beer, hipster, breweries, they grow big, and then we have to buy them, and it's expensive. And then they came to me and said, well, what's your problem? I said, well, I have this sports content that I put on ESPN that a lot of people are watching, but I don't want to just have Budweiser spots. I want to do something different. So they said, okay. So they went and did thinking, and they said, let's make a beer, and it'll sponsor the sports show. And I said, okay, great.
Yeah.
And so they gave us a brewery in our office, which made our employees very happy.
Yeah.
And so every Thursday or Friday, we'd have pizza and beer, and we sort of tweak, you know, put a bit more hops in it or whatever. And so we finally made the recipe, and we went to Budweiser, and they said, oh, this is fantastic. We actually want to launch it in 14 markets.
Okay.
And I just got a text this morning saying, we're going to sell 1 million pints in the UK this year. It's doing very well. And so I don't have to do media anymore. I'm just going to sell beer.
See, that is the future. Yeah.
That's the future of media, booze.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.